Hello, I'm Kim Malinowski. It is July 19th, 2024. I never know if I have to do dates, sometimes it's timeless, yes. Other times things happen, so, I chat about it and like it's sort of this portion might be timely. I just got, I don't know what you would call it. I had like a defense almost yesterday. That was the 18th of July. I have to keep track a little bit because I spend so much time preparing. I got my certificate of archaeology technician or certified archaeological technician. I don't know, it's a cat. And we don't meow. That's all I know. I don't think anything changes, but I've been working on it for 2 years, and at least it's done. Like you have to have things that you just have to check off. This is checked off, and I'm very thankful for everyone that helps me. If like anyone sees this, um, I'm very thankful for all the help, the archaeology and the support and the community you all give me, all of it. I really, really appreciate it. You would have my hands up, I do. I very, very much appreciate it. I thank you. Um, and from the bottom of my heart sounds like very trite almost, but I do thank you. And with great humility too, because it's been a rough journey for all of us. So thank you. I do appreciate all the support and all of the celebration. It is a needed time, right? Um, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. I am I am sick. Um, I it's hard to describe. I've never had chemo, but I assume it's like this. Usually there's a brain fog with me, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And once I am out of my parents' house, I will be better. I technically move out on the 27th, so that I'll be ready for a dig. But here's hoping, that buy a house tomorrow, or at least get it started, the process. Um, I'm asking for sort of like divine intervention, whatever needs to be done because I can't I can't be this sick, you know? It's sort of just like it's like not fair since it's unnecessary. Sort of different when your body's like, "Oh, I'm sick." And you're like, "Oh, well, I have to do this step or whatever," right? But it's being done to me. Out not again, it's against my will. So there is an injustice that's a little bit different. Like something is like going on with my chest right now, and I'm like, "Did I cough? I'm sorry." And like I'm not gonna die, I don't think. It's been rough. That's why the cat, I needed to finish it. Just so that I could say I did, because some days I do think I'm dying. And that's everyone thinks that I'm like, I don't know, that I'm just like, oh, she's just saying that. That's sort of above and off over the top. It's not. I wish I could say it was. Um, I I mask a lot, and professionally, I have to maintain myself, right? So my energy goes to the professional things. So that's any of the editing, any of the teaching, any of the everything, right? And even the tarot. That energy goes there, but it is getting more and more difficult, we'll say. And I will take any intervention you guys got, divine or not. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I'm ready for this period of my life to be over and a new one to start. And what's interesting, some of the cards I pulled, I was like, oh, I hope that's for me. I mean, it's for the collective, obviously, but I'm like, hey, I'm part of the collective. Okay. So that's like it doesn't sound abbreviated, but that's my abbreviated update. I have two cool oracles, and I think I've used them both before because they were unpackaged. This is the Sherwood Oracle. I think you want to start with it because we're like kind of, I like folklore. And if you don't know, I've been writing like a Robin Hood book for quite a while now. It just keeps going. And it's not it took a turn. It's not what I thought it was. Now, the poem that was nominated for the Rising, of course, is Robin Hood, and it's very much this is my jam. So it's very much like that. It's not like what I'm writing like currently, which is why I picked it up because I was like, oh my gosh, it's so great. And then I have the Star Tarot. It has very long descriptions, both of them too. So I might be taking some of it, just like going over some of it and not others. Because like the Sherwood one has like a tree oracle also in it, and it has like a map that you put out on your table. Clearly, I don't have a table. I am in a car, but it's just cool. And look, it's so cool. I know I've used this before, but just love it. Sorry, I do. Finding our person that we started with. Now they don't do it in versions, okay? But we got this card inverted, so I just want to note that, okay? So if you feel like that it doesn't quite apply or a little bit opposite or a little off, this is like you can put a question mark, okay? And then I'm going to turn it. This is the Sheriff of Nottingham. And hopefully in this light, you'll actually be able to see it. Sometimes you don't see my poor little cards, even though I try, and I'm sorry about that. Okay? You see him, he looks very crafty and wise. I think that's how we're starting off. Like we know where we want to go. Now, this oracle is all about journeys and place and where you go. And like that's why I have a map, right? That I'm supposed to be using. So this is the proud sheriff of Nottingham. He was not pleased with this, for he could not find brave Robin Hood and might not have his prey. Little Jest of Robin Hood. So this is the ballads and folklore. You'll hear all of it, which is really fun. I'm really doing this for Steve Altman. I admit it, okay? It's for me and Steve. Just us. Every hero is pitted against a villain, but we tend to hear more about the heroes than this villain in story cycles, like such as Robin Hood. Minor threats, greedy church officials, oppressive knights, or an uncertain nature of the goddess of Kirklees. But the archetypal villain of Robin Hood cycle is the Sheriff of Nottingham, and his real name was Ralph Murdoch. I think that's it. It's Murdach. I don't think at the time it would be called Murdoch. That's the problem with these names is that they change over time. In my poem, referenced earlier, all the names change throughout, time in my poem as it goes on. So it gets a little dicey. It's unclear exactly when he became the focus of every negative aspect of Norman rule, but from the Saxon point of view, adopted by most of the ballads and tales, he represents the oppressive, ruthless rule of Norman overlords, following William the Conqueror's successful invasion of Britain after the defeat of King Harold at Hastings in 1066. Now, I don't know all this history, and perhaps I should. But there you go. Rewind if you have no idea what I just said, because I don't know what I just said. If the sheriff in the Robin Hood cycle is based on a real character, it is not known who, though two men named Ralph Murdoch are said to have held the post in the time most often associated with Robin Hood. He's more likely a composite figure representing every tyrannical official who stole lands from the Saxon nobles, imposed overwhelming taxes, and extracted bloody punishments for any infringement of the law instigated by the Normans. So any excuse, right? So like a composite character, basically, I just want to make sure that it's like every bad guy is being represented by him. Okay. And like the idea that we pulled the villain first, I think is interesting. Okay. Like this is like where we start. I'm not saying that we're villains, but there is like a powerfulness. The punishment for a poacher killing the deer in the forest, all of which is owned by the king at the time, was a severing of a hand. Two infringements leave a man helpless. That's the constant theme of Robin. and the outlaws of Sherwood poaching deer was a very real sign of rebellion. So, in all the stories, it's always Robin, and even like, um, I'm I'm obsessed with Kevin Costner's one, Robin Hood, Princess Thieves, because that's where I really okay, as a child, really, right, and okay, um, like found Robin Hood. Oh my gosh, he's so great. Everyone's like how bad the movie is, and I'm like, no, it is like my gem. It's because it's like a childhood sort of imprint. So, like there's this imprint of going against the grain. And you're going against maybe yourself. Okay. And the sheriff's role throughout the kingdom was to oversee tax collection, punish thieves and outlaws, and keep trade routes between cities and towns open. This also reminds me very much of justice as a card, like sort of like the fates. There's a ruling order to things, whether or not we consider it good or bad, it is like lawful. Um, this necessitated a particular tyrannical behavior, and as such, Sheriff of Nottingham represents everything opposite to Robin and his men. As a guide, therefore, the sheriff represents intense, organized, and sometimes unprincipled actions. So, like, that is how I'm going to read it again. That's how, like, we can see it as helping us, like, and feel as a guide. Intense, organized, and sometimes unprincipled actions. So sometimes you just have to do what you got to do. Is that not really just like a shorter version of like, well, you have to defend yourself and you have to do what you have to do to get what you need, whatever that is you need? As a challenger, he demands that you look beyond your own hopes and longings towards something else. Look for him in the cavernous halls of Nottingham Castle, but be careful not to turn your back. So this is also not a trusting card, right? So if this is not us, then perhaps there's a person that is in our life that we just need to, I don't say distrust. I mean, I don't trust a damn person except, well, one. But we had this whole like little like bust ceremony. It's almost ridiculous, but so true. And so maybe watch who you trust. And yes, trust yourself, but look inside and see what your motivations are. So the keywords are intrusion, selfishness, overly possessive, uncaring, greed, lavishness, tyrannical, treachery, doubt, and fear. That's a whole hell of a lot of negative words. I don't think we are that negative. That's why I'm like, like bring it in, bring it in. Is there somebody or something? Like I'm working on a lot of shadow work. So is there fear? Yes. And do I see tyranny? Yes. The tyranny is not necessarily me, but I react to it. And like I don't even know why I'm yelling at someone, except that they have, they act like my parents. So I rebel against them because I shouldn't be that's a shadow. So, I mean, like, so that sort of thing, like, just watch, definitely watch. All right, here it goes for a bigger one. Since this is like major, what they would consider major arcana, I want to make sure that I do my duty. As a companion, my task is to seek out things that are not aligned with the world. Outlaws and those who flout the law of the king are my enemies, but my skill is to recognize when things are not working as they should and find effective responses to this. Thus, if you accept me as a companion or challenger, I will look for holes in your life, for decisions you made that led to nowhere, and for lost opportunities. And we could dwell on those lost opportunities, all those holes that they're talking about. Um, we might need to note them, but perhaps we need to release them too. I'm also learning that it's very difficult, right? And like all these like lost opportunities, it makes it sound like you can never have that opportunity again. Maybe not that particular opportunity, but that doesn't mean that you can't go back. I left an opportunity to be an archaeologist when I was 18 because I was angry at the professors that would have been teaching me. And I said, well, when they die or retire, I will go back. It's a bit addictive, but I went back when I am 41. I was 39 when when I started back. And, you know, I had a second chance. There's always other chances. So don't be like, I missed an opportunity. Yeah, maybe you didn't get that sale. There'll be another sale. Maybe you didn't get that degree. There'll be something else. As a challenger, I am first and foremost an administrator. As sheriff, I have the power to administer justice, shape events, dictate the needs of those under my care. Though many regard me as an enemy, I can act on the behalf of those who come in search of answers. In search of answers. You may not always like my conclusions, nevertheless. I shall be assiduous in seeking out the blockages and diversions in the journey through life. So exactly that. We just talked about those spaces, those gaps, those regrets. I didn't even think that this would be about regrets, but aren't there some things that we didn't do? Didn't do is sometimes worse than did. Like there are things that I obsess about that I did in like third grade that I'm like, oh, that was so awful. But those aren't like the deep wounds that I don't think about. The deep wounds that I have, the regrets that I may not know are regrets because I've repressed them so badly. I don't regret not getting my PhD now. I still want one, but I don't regret the literary one. It was not the right time for me. I was so ashamed of grammar, of losing language at the time. It was starting to go away before my 5 years. And I have to say that I thought that was my regret. But it's not the actual it's how much I beat myself up for it for the next decade. I hated myself for the next decade. I mean, I couldn't read or write, sure. But then I hated myself for the PhD and not finishing it. So that's like the shadow, the deepness of it. It's not the actual event, perhaps. It's not the actual thing that you didn't do. It's not the actual thing that you did. It's like whatever the emotion behind that, or what as comes after the self-betrayal, the anger, the beating oneself up. I mean, maybe that's what we have to work on. There is a blessing. Take care lest you become lost amid the trees. Watch where you set your feet and which road you travel. Be precise in your dealings with others and trust only those you know well. Many possibilities lie before you, but each should be considered before setting foot upon any path. This is my blessing. And as we go forward, we should note that we should definitely, on the roads that we travel, you know, don't get lost, right? I've gotten lost. All right, each one of these cards comes with a tree. And I'm just going to say Medlar, Medlar, and it's healing and protection. Because otherwise it's gonna get very long. Because both of these have way cards, right? Okay, then the next one is 35, and I got it inverted, so you can do that question mark. Um, this is an interesting one because this represents us, the seeker. And like I always see us as a fool, we might not have the zero card, right? But it's sort of like what we're doing. We sort of go and we see what the path is and like, what is it gonna say today? Um, and so let's say that this represents the seeker using the deck. So that's us. So there are no figures on it. It shows the path the reader takes as they set forth on their journey into Sherwood. It thus represents you to be used to help to select individual cards by shuffling it into the deck and then taking a card from one side or the other from before or after. Okay? And the card back, am I holding it the right way? Is a green man with a powerful raven holding the arrow in its beak. This brings together underlying themes the oracle, vision, myth, hidden lore, and the wildwood. So this is where we're journeying through. Okay. You can see that those trees, you don't know their leaves are above them. You don't know what season. It looks like winter. It looks a little desolate, doesn't it, for Sherwood Forest? But sort of like it's not all briars either. And the card that was next came with it was 13. Let me try to get it to you. David of Doncaster, and the tree name is Lark, Larch. These are I have to learn my botanicals. There's so much I don't know. Have you ever found that? Like you're like you deep dive into one thing and you realize just the vastness of knowledge. The quote that goes with it: "With that step forth a brave young man, David of Doncaster, he, Master, he said, be ruled by me, and the green round will not stir." And I'll say that because you probably couldn't hear me. With that step forth a brave young man, David of Doncaster, he, Master, he said, be ruled by me, from the greenwood will not stir. And that's from Robin Hood and the Golden Arrow. So it says this character appears in the Ballad of Robin Hood and the Golden Arrow, and he is later named as a young wrestler saved from an angry mob by Sir Richard at Lee and a guest of Robin Hood. As his name implies, he was from the town of Doncaster,